let's get to talking.
Do you want to do an introduction at all?
Well,
or is that more of a Will's Basement locale?
I don't know. How do you begin to introduce such a wonderful experience such as the first annual GFunk Human Be-In?
Be-In!
We decided last time that Max would be our band leader, like sound effects guy.
He's got the jacket for it, so I'm
the band leader, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So the funky clothes party, maybe we'll just go around the circle and introduce each other, because actually we haven't totally done that yet. And describe what kind of funky clothes, what kind of funkiness we brought to the GFunk Human Be-In tonight.
I know. I feel I brought an odd amount of funkiness as I'm just wearing a blue suit, but I'm going downtown after this tonight, so that's my outfit for the evening. Nothing too wacky, but
I sense
classy
funk.
nonetheless.
I sense some funk.
I don't think I've ever seen you with this whole beard.
No,
Has he had that for very long?
For as long as for as long as we've been seriously talking about things.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely a step up.
Step up from the baby face.
Yeah,
it's confirmed.
Baby face is real.
Did you have beard when we were in Frank White's class?
I did, but it was like a 2-day freshly shaved, kind of grow in, the 5 o'clock shadow, the designer stubble kind of thing going on.
Designer stubble, I like it.
Well, for the personal funkiness that I perceived in you, it was the beard, just because it was different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
See, your
Color's
beard's
different,
back.
too.
Well, yeah, my beard is coming back now as well.
You were rocking the stash for a while there.
I had to shave it for my package delivery job. I had just a temporary 2-week job where you're going to be outside in the cold. You feel like you'd be allowed to have a beard, but that wasn't the case. So I had a mustache for a while. Beard is coming back.
There you go.
My grandpa had a sick beard at Christmas this year. It was like white and really cool, and he could totally be Santa. He's got like a southern accent too.
Southern Santa.
It's the way to be, man.
Max, you're dressed funky.
Technically, I had it on. I have a UND band uniform from around the 80s era, but it was old when that was the case, so it was before that probably. I don't know when. The interesting cat hat, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. With a good poof ball.
Yeah. I like it.
Haley, I just met you today.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming into the apartment I'm occupying this week to say hi.
Occupies Cal's place.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lock-in, a yearly lock-in.
I mean, this could be a yearly lock-in. The GFunk Human Be-In 2019 could be in the exact same location.
Yeah.
I
didn't tell you I locked the doors, and nobody can leave.
So it's the lock-in at YourPalKal.
Yes, and Cal's not even here.
Annual episode.
Yeah.
We can edit him in. It's okay.
Okay. Actually, he wishes he were here. He said that.
Just have an edited version with audio that is completely different, and it just breaks in. It's like, YourPalKal here as well.
Yeah.
Cuts back.
I'm about it.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, did Tim warn you about the funkiness that you were going to witness here?
Not really.
No.
I tried, but
I don't think that anything can faze me, really, so that's...
So when you
That's
saw this dude in a big pink coat and purple pants and ice cream socks stumbling down the stairs to let you in, you didn't turn around and run, so that was a good sign.
I'm about it.
Exploration, man.
Sweet. And Alayna, I'm glad you're here, because we haven't seen each other in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think it's been like a year.
I feel like it's been longer.
Longer than that, though. Yeah, we met at an art gallery thing a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that at the Guild?
Yeah, at the Guild. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Well, but do you guys recognize Alayna from high school too?
I do.
Yeah, you do.
Well, we briefly talked about all that jazz.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Everything's
Did you,
going on, but-
Maria?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody.
Maria.
We're all connected.
The vocal
Yes.
coach.
Yes. You had Maria too, right?
Yes, does that mean you can just like break into random songs?
Yeah.
What would be the one
Funny.
song that Maria would be most proud of if we started
Most
singing?
proud of?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. True story.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
no, I learned today, and I'm a little disappointed that, as you know, every year I go to Somerset and preach harms reduction. Hand out cards from Dance Safe, try to get funding from different businesses around town, places like that for these travels. Somerset is not going to be a thing this year.
Really?
They said they're taking a year off to recreate their musical vision. So I don't know if that means they're actually trying to do some major things, if they had permits that got denied. I don't really know.
But you'll have to bring your harm reduction loving elsewhere.
Absolutely.
This year. When is that? Usually in the summer?
Yeah, it's usually in early August, right before school.
In the cities, right?
Somerset, Wisconsin.
Oh, man. Yeah, see, it shows what I know. That's cool. I mean, it's not cool that it's not going to happen.
But, I don't know, it
could
opens
just
the
be...
door for a new trip, a new opportunity, hopefully.
Like going to a good festival.
Yeah.
Oh,
that hurts, but...
This is when we need like a simple basic sound thing. That
Yes, exactly. We'll get it next time. We can hook up a little keyboard to the...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It'd be really easy to do live.
That'd be funny.
What is a good festival?
Oh, there are all kinds of good festivals.
But
that's not really my aesthetic,
Somerset.
Yeah.
I've never been myself.
It's interesting. It's very interesting. Lots of drug use, of course, which is one of the main reasons that I was kind of drawn to it for the harms reduction purpose, right? And the thing that really concerned me is that there's so many interesting combinations of things. Just people mixing opioids and stimulants and psychedelics and stimulants and just ridiculous combinations to
Going
me.
off the rails, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of rails, lots of, alcohol and cocaine from what I've seen. Which is seems like a very interesting combination, but...
Alcohol and anything makes a combination pretty interesting. And bound to be interesting what kind of effect it'll have.
And,
unpredictable for sure.
Frank's White Class, that was one thing he kind of reamed into us is alcohol and cocaine, creating cocaethylene inside of your blood, or inside of your body, and, making an overdose a very real possibility if you compare it to using one substance at a time.
Have you seen a lot of people using ketamine at festivals like that?
I saw one guy. Every time I go to Somerset, we stay off Somerset grounds at a different campsite called Float Right. And at Float Right, my first Somerset festival, which would be 2 years ago, I saw a dude in a K-hole, and they ended up calling security and the police because he was unresponsive. And I just kind of picked him up from his chair. He was in this dinky old lawn chair. I just kind of picked him up and walked him to the entrance. So that's the only time I've really seen ketamine being used. I just went over to the guys. I was like, yo, is he okay? Like, what's going on? And they said he hit a K-hole, so...
I wonder how you describe a K-hole to somebody. I don't know.
There's that Netflix, I think, was it Drugs Inc. or something like that, where they did an episode on ketamine. It talks about it. It's like you reach a certain amount of dosage where instead of like a stimulant purpose, it almost puts you into like your body, like it's almost like paralyzed kind of, right? You like fall asleep almost, but you're like very withdrawn from your body. What is that called? Kind of
dissociation. I don't know. How would you start the story?
Due to extraneous circumstances, Haley was involved in a legitimate and legal path to have ketamine administered to her via a registered health professional. Edit out this dog bark.
Oh!
I was so into the conversation that I was just like...
Yeah, I saw you jump from
I know, I was like, woo!
Everybody, this is Lexi.
Lexi, nice
Hi,
to meet you.
Hi.
We agreed on the funky clothes party, so this is what I wore.
Yeah.
I want to see the hat.
You can sit here and you have to eventually sign the guest book. Let's see, I bet there's another chair in this apartment somewhere.
Sam is a very, very good dog, albeit very old.
Are you the good girl?
I don't really see ketamine as like a EDM concert type experience.
No, not really.
I don't know.
Just similarly to as I don't see like people necessarily taking DMT at like a
festival.
Yeah, like a very exciting thing.
I couldn't see that either. Stimulants make a lot of sense to me. Psychedelics make a good amount of sense to me. The problem is you're going to have to be able to control your headspace really well for something like that. I've seen people take some type of psychedelic and not be able to hold their headspace well and start,
Give
freaking
into
out.
the anxiety.
That's a thing.
Oh, for sure.
And even worse when people are just there and say, oh, I'm at a festival and I've never taken these drugs before, but I've heard LSD is really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just do it surrounded by people and loud noises.
Mm-hmm.
And I know some people that have done that, and it's been a fantastic time. I know other people that have done that, it's not a fantastic time, and, they're going through mental things for a while, trying to get...
Oh, pup.
Yeah, that was...
Goodbye. Goodbye, chair. Goodbye, chair. And goodbye, Will's coccyx.
Dude, this had a really heavy printer on it back there, and I moved the printer. It's like, oh, this one.
I guess the printer was like max loads.
Oh, man.
The isness strikes again. He put like a cinder block on there and started jumping on it. I don't know why it broke.
Oh, man.
Just kidding.
I really want to know what that sounds like on the recording. I like it. I want to get back really quick to the ketamine conversation.
I do.
Haley, who's with us, graduated with honors with a degree in medical laboratory science.
Yep.
I'm very curious as to what you think the public perception and even the perception of other health professionals is when discussing ketamine and ketamine use as a medical application.
That's a loaded question.
I don't intend for it. I apologize.
So I'm currently a second year medical student. And how do I even describe the loadedness of the most important exam of my life is within the next 6 months. As you can imagine, medical school is not really a fun place to be for any number of reasons. It tends to bring out the worst in people. That's for sure. So, administration saw that I was sort of slipping a little bit. They didn't think that there was anything that I could do in over the span of the Christmas break to really make things better, so to speak. And we're suggesting an entire year leave from school, which would be pretty much a financial death sentence, as you can imagine. So, I don't know, do you have anything to say?
No, that sounds pretty right. I know the administration thought that leave was going to be a good option for you because they didn't feel that there was anything that you could do in such a short span of time in the Christmas break of a couple weeks, right? Mm-hmm. So what avenues did you pursue?
Well, the traditional avenues for depression, which was ultimately my diagnosis, unspecified depressive disorder. So I was never so dysfunctional so as to hit the major criteria, but I wasn't so functional to just be, dysthymic or something like that. So I was sort of in this very uncomfortable middle ground where it was hard to move forward with pretty much any medical practitioner. A lot of medications that I had tried were horrible and produced a lot of really nasty side effects. And if you're going to make a major change like that, for SSRIs, they say that 4 to 6 weeks is the amount of time that you need to take to know whether or not things are going to be working for you. With some of the atypicals like bupropion and some of the SNRIs, it can be a little bit earlier, like 2 to 4 weeks. But that was still not really within the time frame that was set for me. So I ended up looking into some of the primary literature, and if you ever go down that wormhole, it becomes pretty much immediately apparent that all of the FDA-approved pharmacologic treatments for depression can only be about 50% effective. But the research on ketamine was really, really interesting and enlightening.
Where do you find this
depressive
research?
disorders.
When you say you went into the primary literature wormhole, most people probably don't know where that is.
That's very true, and I am lucky to sort of have those databases at my disposal. As a med student, for the average person, it can be really frustrating because with the lay press, you don't know what's sensationalist and what's real, and sort of how to wade through that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I believe Time did a piece on ketamine very recently.
Yep, about reduction in suicidal ideation within 24 hours. And that's pretty much what the literature supports. Like, if ketamine is going to work for you, you're going to know within 24 hours. And it's not going to be like, this experience where it just sort of hits you, right? Like, oh, I'm cured. It kind of creeps up on you. However, you will know. So I decided that for the time frame and also for the efficacy, because most research papers, and I haven't looked too recently at this, but I think we're reporting like a 75 to 90% response rate within a couple days.
That seems fairly high compared to the 50% earlier.
Yes.
So
Is
over 4 to 6 weeks.
okay,
So
right.
is considering ketamine as a assistant to therapy and treatment, is it something that you take once or twice with a therapist, or something that you basically get prescribed and you take home with you and you do it every day or something? Do you know
So the oral bioavailability of ketamine is non-existent, so you have to do, not non-existent, but
It's not that great.
It's not that great. It's not that great. So a timed intravenous infusion is definitely the way to go. When I did mine, I did a 40-minute infusion with a 20-minute recovery period. And during that time, it's important, obviously, to be pretty heavily monitored. So you have pulse ox, so oxygen saturation of your blood is measured. There's a 3-lead EKG to make sure that your heart is doing good, and they also take blood pressures every 15 minutes. So it's very medicalized, that's for sure, but it's also very important. I wouldn't recommend it as a recreational substance, that's for sure.
Because at extremely high doses, or I should say higher doses, it's used in surgeries, correct?
Is it an anesthetic?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it was FDA approved in 1970 for anesthesia.
Okay.
And that's who I went to. I went to an anesthesiologist. So there was really no mental health component associated with it, which was also interesting.
The doctor giving you the treatment, wasn't a mental health professional in that sense?
No.
But
and that was by choice for me, because there are a couple clinics within, I don't know, a 5-hour drive, but there's only one individual I know that's an anesthesiologist. The rest are psychiatrists, and I just felt more confident that if something were to go wrong, an anesthesiologist would probably have a better handle on how to manage it than a psychiatrist would. But it's personal preference.
How many infusions or treatment sessions did you have?
I did 3.
Okay.
Most literature supports doing 6 initial treatments, and that is a completely arbitrary number. No one really knows sort of what the threshold is, and it's obviously going to be very patient dependent as well.
how did you feel? 3? Was it a few days apart?
Yeah, so you do 1 day on, 1 day off.
Yeah. Okay. Personally, do you think it was the right amount?
I upped my dose 1/10 of a milligram per kilogram each time, and my vitals stayed stable. I didn't have too much dissociation or anything like that. But if if you're looking into the sort of medical applications for ketamine, whether it's for depression, PTSD, chronic pain, that type of thing, I would highly recommend. That's for sure.
So you think it worked for you? At the end of the day, you went through these treatments, and would you say that it did something positive for you?
There are some people that never need to go back. There are some people that go back in as little as a month. It's definitely an avenue that is yet to be explored.
Yeah, so you're just still feeling after your first cycle of doing this, you haven't wanted to go back already for more?
I feel like my symptoms are adequately managed, that's for sure. Now, contrary to popular opinion, it's not a substance that is considered addictive, right? It can be abused, certainly, but it's not an addictive substance, so that's a plus. The major hindrance I see with a lot of people that could derive benefit from this is cost, because no insurance companies will touch it. It's off-label use right now, so the FDA does not approve of ketamine for any of these things.
But you can still get it here. Do you know, has that always been the case?
I am not sure legally. Of course, illegally, you can get just about any substance, going through the right avenues. But legally, I'm not sure.
So currently in the United States, it's a Schedule 3 substance. So that's like on par with methylphenidate or Ritalin, basically. So it's not that big of a deal.
Do you know if the providers have to go through a certain kind of training or licensure to be able to give that treatment? Or maybe just the standard?
So since it's not regulated by the FDA currently, it's, I wouldn't say sketchy, but the regulation is definitely far less than many other medications. But since it falls under that off-label use category, it pretty much absolves anyone of malpractice, I guess. And providers like it because it's just a fee-for-service thing. They don't have to deal with third parties and all kinds of stuff. So it's like you get your infusion, I get my money, we're both happy.
And there's no insurance company as an intermediary at all with payments or anything too, because you said insurance doesn't cover this kind of treatment yet.
Okay, so that's a problem, right?
So mine were $600 each.
Oh,
for an hour's worth total of
for
a doctor's
an hour's
time.
worth. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a
Pricey.
lot. And I wonder if more availability of this. When I heard about ketamine for the first time, it was around the time one of our friends died in high school. Was it at Christian Bjerk's when he died? I can't remember actually what substance was finally ruled as killing him that he was on that night, but at least around that time, it was when I first even ever heard of ketamine as a thing or what it was. And whenever anybody mentions it, they say a horse tranquilizer, elephant tranquilizer, or something. Is that what you guys have ever heard about ketamine before?
That was the first thing I remember being told about it is,
Horse?
oh, it's a horse tranquilizer. You give it to horses and it'll put them under for surgery, something like that.
that's what I've heard.
So
I mean, that just means it's
strange.
the reason that is in the past, it's obviously been easier to acquire things via the veterinary route as opposed to like the human medical route. But yeah, it is an anesthetic.
Yeah. So
An MDA receptor antagonist.
So basically, it first had a medical use and a veterinary use, and then an illicit use.
Yes.
And it still has this medical use and value, but also it's different than we thought originally. I mean, it might be not just for putting out horses or people, but for treating depression and stuff.
Right.
It's hard for people maybe to comprehend that ketamine whatever you had associated that with, even if it was a medical use, is now this sort of medical
I feel it's the same thing with MDMA. When that first came out as a treatment option for PTSD for veterans, a lot of people had a hard time saying that this drug that is stereotypically used at EDM concerts and raves can also help somebody get through one of the hardest mental blocks they've ever had in their life, or mental issues.
I would disagree. Because that's always been a Schedule 1 substance, so ruled as not having any pharmacologic benefit or little pharmacologic benefit.
Well, so is marijuana.
Well, right, but that's not not where I'm going.
Sorry.
I'm just saying that ketamine has an established medical use as, like I said, an NMDA receptor antagonist, so it increases glutamate concentrations in the brain. In the recreational sphere, however, it's considered an entheogen, so God-producing, right? So very, very much tied into spirituality and that type of perceptual change.
Yeah, and it's like heroin, we don't think of as having a medicinal benefit, but other opioids definitely do. Mm-hmm. Like even fentanyl, which is sounds even scarier than ketamine. Sounds way scarier because how everybody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. My grandma got fentanyl when she went in for her hip thing, and like it was a painkiller that she needed, that she got, that worked, that didn't get her addicted, So all of these things, and you can use fentanyl as a horse tranquilizer too. Like it's just weird how we talk about these things. Most of them do have a sensible kind of use. It's really amazing then when there's even more uses for these things that are being documented as working. Like a lot of people don't even know that you can use ketamine for a depression treatment. But why don't we know that, I guess?
There's certainly a lot of stigma in the established medical community about those things. Like, yeah, today was very interesting. There are certain people in administration that knew that this was being used as, a depression treatment or a treatment for PTSD, chronic pain, that kind of thing. And there are people that were just completely oblivious to it. Licensed MDs. Exposure is definitely a thing, but there's also an inherent stigma, I think, that people have as well.
That'd be interesting. It'd be cool to talk to Cal's dad about this, because Cal's dad is a Suboxone provider in Bismarck. And he's talked about the stigma that exists for him giving Suboxone for like opioid or medication-assisted therapy. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't surprise me, I guess, that there'd be a stigma in the medical community with other weird words like ketamine. They're scary.
Mm-hmm. You should make them not scary.
I think that takes time, and it takes not only in the medical community, but in just the everyday average Joe community education. You mentioned that not many people know about this as an avenue of treatment. Not many people know about a lot of these alternative, I guess I'd call them avenues, right? Or avenues that aren't very mainstream. I work as a server at a bar in town, and I had a customer talk to me very briefly, and it came up naturally in conversation that MDMA is used for PTSD therapy, right? Like I mentioned earlier. And they were so taken aback by that. And they themselves were an Air Force veteran. And they said they had no idea that was a thing. And they themselves had battled PTSD for 20 years after the war that they were in, or, when they were deployed. And it was very interesting to hear that. It was very interesting knowing that this gentleman went through as many avenues as he could find and had never been told about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. See, James, who founded the Psychedelic Club in Colorado, that was his basic story, too. He tried everything else first, and none of it worked. And the last thing he found was, I guess he got lucky, he found the phase 2 clinical trials that MAPS was going into with MDMA. If he hadn't seen that. I mean, only a small number of people got to participate in that.
Mm-hmm. And that brings up a good point, because the only way that you can currently do that as a medical therapy is to be enrolled in a clinical trial. There's really no other way around it because of how it's scheduled.
Is that how it is with the ketamine too?
No.
No, that's
because it has an
past
established
trials.
medical use.
Yes, okay.
So
right.
You can get into the weeds very quickly with how all that is legislated.
It seems like it takes so long too. So MAPS is moving into phase 3 trials now with people, but they have to organize it in like many different cities across the country, and it's going to take many years for them to even collect the data and then process it and submit it and paperwork and all that. It'll still be more than 5 years probably until they're even done with their phase 3. And so that's, I don't know, an interesting problem. Why it takes so long for some of these things. Probably good that it's being so thoroughly looked at, but the downside is it takes long, I guess.
I feel like that's the same thing with a lot of like research type.
Takes long.
Yeah, I mean, I went into my new job at UND as a student researcher, and just some of like the procedures you have to, and they're doing things with the Department of Energy. Just some of like the, I don't know what you'd call that, procedures and other kind of checkpoints you have to make along the way.
Red tape stuff?
A lot of hoops to jump through, I assume.
Yes, exactly. It's just kind of like, it's thorough, but it's just, it makes it take 500 times longer. It's kind of interesting. I've never seen it before.
The thoroughness definitely exists
For a reason.
But yeah, it's
today,
difficult.
Did you have a fusion today? An infusion today?
I did not know.
Oh.
No, I went to Minneapolis for mine. I stayed there for a week.
Is that the nearest you can get this treatment?
The nearest is Bismarck. But I don't know. I've never contacted them directly, so I don't know how active their practice is or what their procedures sort of are.
You said you were lucky to have been near access to the primary literature, but it seems like that luck was really valuable. It seems like it shouldn't just be like, oh, lucky you. You know, that should be like a right of all people to have that knowledge.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah, we were.
Absolutely. I feel like everyone should be entitled to any primary literature that they so choose, right? But the journals wouldn't be happy about that because they couldn't, charge $35 a paper for the average Joe or whatever to keep their journal going. So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years how that changes. Certainly, because obviously the administration of these things is so much different than it was. You used to have to go to an actual medical library and find the printed journal.
Yeah, think about it. Not too long ago, there was no way to know if you were getting a prescription at the Grand Forks Pharmacy for painkillers, that you didn't have another prescription at another pharmacy in another town or on the other side of town even. Because they didn't have the records to communicate. Like, I mean, I can't... We all grew up in a world with the internet. So I can't understand. I can't even imagine where you wouldn't have that information, It wasn't that long ago when it was very different.
No, and it's definitely boomed in the past couple of years, too. Like, I still remember as a kid the dial-up sounds, right? The sounds. The way they'd communicate with each other.
Yes.
But no, I think in terms of the availability of these journals, I'm hoping that as technology advances, that it'll be easier to get access to these things. At least for mainstream press, I'm fairly confident that's going to be a thing. For established medical journals and medical publications that Haley's read, I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, just because they also have to make money, right? And they do charge per download or per read of these papers.
There are more journals now that are open access and available. The problem is wondering if the articles they publish are still sincerely done and well reviewed before they're shared is always the problem, I guess. But a lot
of that comes down to the reader, though. You have to be able to establish what constitutes a good study and what doesn't.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's where people have rationalized a lot of this gatekeeping. You know, like, well, if we just let everyone read this, then it's going to become this sensationalist thing, even though it's not, you know, a very statistically significant finding or what have you. So information literacy, definitely a thing, but you have to have the information first in order to know how to interpret it.
Yeah. That's why I like the statistics class, stuff like that. Learning that what statistics is, that was weird. That was a trip for me to begin to wrap my head around what that is. And I still don't fully understand it, honestly, how we come up with probabilities for things. But just having seen that there is some kind of method behind it and reason why, how you get it, made me respect science more and not respect a study that had a bad sample size or statistical whatever.
And even at that, level of things, even if you have the facts and you have correct numbers, you can still skew things to show what you want if you have a certain narrative, which I found the most interesting thing from my statistics classes in university as well.
A lot of times on my field, it's you make a graph or a figure or something, but instead of showing them this part, you kind of just back it up over here and just kind of crop it out a little bit. Oh, look at there. That's a good linearization right there. Look at that. That's a pretty high R-squared.
Yes. Like today, it just occurred to me as I take the dog out onto the 3rd-story balcony to pee on our little pad, and I'm looking out north. What do I see? The Red River and Minnesota is to the north. What? And it's because, the river is very windy. Generally, it goes north and south. But right here, it's going the other direction. And I look across it to see north into Minnesota. And it's kind of strange. But it goes to a lot of those questions about when people make a joke, oh, it's snowing today, so climate change, haha, whatever. It's like, no, that's just one part of this little line, of this curvy line, which is actually a lot bigger, which, has another trend if you look at it differently. Little things like that I learned to help understand these questions. Data. Doesn't that sound good? I want to have a dog and name it Data. Name my children Data.
Like that android from Star Trek?
I don't know.
There's a character named Data.
Oh, really? Yeah. See, this is an unoriginal idea.
That doesn't mean you still can't make it yours, Will. You just gotta believe.
Yeah.
It was original because you didn't know it.
Okay.
Original to you.
Data with a silent J at the end.
Ah. Yeah. DHATA.
Data.
You said you were a microbiologist.
In a past life.
You ever heard of tardigrades?
I love tardigrades.
How much do you like tardigrades?
Like tardigrades a little...
I like tardigrades.
Little things? Well, by little.
Water things.
That little, but...
Yeah.
They're very small.
Yes.
They're like little bears. They got little pincer
However,
face.
they do not cause human disease, so a little bit lower on my radar.
Ah.
Yeah.
They just hang out, loaf around, eat dirt.
Loafing.
I wish I could just loaf.
Surviving the vacuum of space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can do a lot.
I have a cat at home. He
You call
loafs.
him- That's a good name for a cat. Here, loaf.
Come here, loaf.
Meow.
Oh, I had to watch my friend's cat named Yoshi over the Christmas break. It sounded exactly like that.
What?
Just like an angry old man trapped in a cat's body. It was insane. Meow. I'm like, dude, what's wrong with you?
Dude, I gotta pull up a
Our
Snapchat
cat is a
for
little
you.
bit effeminate, though.
Yeah, we have a very feminine male cat. Like the perfect white floof. Its eyes are beautiful blue that look like they were wrapped in a sepia Instagram filter. It's ridiculous. It's the perfect. It's just the perfect.
Oh.
That's it.
For it.
It's not named Love.
Oh, he was not happy.
No, he's fine. That's his normal meow.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That sounds like an
It sounds
meow.
angry.
I know, that's his normal meow. You'll be like, doof, and he'll be like,
Jeez.
Is that your cat?
Your cat's
My
name is
parents'
Doof.
cat, technically.
I like
Doof.
that.
Because when he was a little baby kid, we had a laser and he kept running into the wall.
Doof.
And he would back up and shake his head and run into the wall again at the laser and be like, oh.
My former roommate's Rottweiler does that.
Rottweiler.
Yeah.
Lit.
Addie.
I like Brock.
Brock.
You know,
Brock.
a dog named
just,
Brock.
Just this massive pit bull. It was a rescue dog that my former roommates, Connor and Raj, had adopted. And it doesn't have ears because it was a fighting dog. So like its ears got cut off. But its name is Brock. And it's just this beast of a dog.
It
like,
looks like the scariest dog ever. And and it just bombards you when you walk in the house. But it's so polite. Like, it doesn't jump on you, it doesn't do anything. It'll just stand in front of you and like give you the little puppy eyes, and like it has very expressive eyebrows.
It was very, very cool to see because, like, we walked in. Haley had never met Connor and Raj. They own a house in the cities that we were staying at when we went there most recently. Had never met the dogs, had never seen their place, right? Nothing. We showed up at 2 a.m. and just kind of walked in and fell asleep because, like, we were like, yeah, we'll be here really late. And they're like, okay, we'll just keep the door unlocked. You can go to sleep. So we walk in, and I was like, all right, they have a dog and a new dog I haven't met. But, like, Addie is a very big Rottweiler, like, at least 100 pounds, just like beefy. And Brock just happened to be this short, low, like 110 pound, maybe just beast of a dog. Nothing but solid, thick muscle. Like, if you could put a bouncer into a dog's body, that's what it became. It was ridiculous. So I just remember.
But it was so sweet.
No, but I just remember walking in, and this dog, which had this little nub of a tail, was just wagging so hard its back end would move on the tile floor. And Haley just looked at the dog and was like, I love you.
Did that work?
It did. The dog just hopped up on the bed and was like, you should cuddle me now. It was adorable.
Jeez. I wish I'd worked with Sam. What do you do with Sam? She was totally good with you coming in.
Really?
We will have
she
to
didn't
bounce
work at all.
you
Well, she
off
knows
very
me,
soon.
that's
Yes,
This year or
I
whatever.
like that.
That's fine.
Every time everyone else who came in, they got barked
She didn't
at.
stop barking.
No,
Yeah.
not
Good girl.
So she forgot about it.
Good girl.
I was a little worried about it.
Yeah, come here.
But I was glad you came because she's really good now.
She's old and she's like very, like she has a strong personality and she's very like she gets hurt easily. Like
I don't know. It's definitely a
she
thing.
knows when you're like telling her something mean.
My dad had a legitimately autistic cat.
Yeah, right. Like you would think it's not a thing.
Like, it was a real thing. It had
autistic
6 toes. It was a turtle cat, but
But the
like,
Hemingway polydactyl mutation is not associated with any.
correct. However, before he adopted it, they had told him, they're like, this cat has legitimate diagnosed mental issues.
Okay.
Like, it has a mental deficiency.
Oh no. You know, the biggest cause of that in cats, and I don't know how I like this, or how I know this, because I'm not a veterinarian, but it's actually distemper, maternal distemper, can mess up.
Distemper?
Yeah.
What do you mean distemper?
So that's something that you would ordinarily vaccinate your dogs and cats against, right? So the reason being that if they have a litter of puppies or kittens, then the maternal infection can cross over and cause problems with neurologic development. Yeah, we got a lot of critters.
A lot of critters where?
That's for sure. I'm also a herpetologist, so I have a lot of reptiles.
At home?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Like snake.
And what other kinds of reptiles?
So I have a black and white Argentinian tegu.
What's a tegu?
They are a pretty massive carnivorous lizard.
Cool.
They are...
How massive? I mean, like Komodo dragon massive?
No, but she'll get to be about 10, 12 pounds, probably, so...
Like a small house cat
Yeah.
lizard that eats meat.
How big is Peppa the Pig?
A mini dog.
Like 100.
She has an Instagram.
80 pounds.
That's for real.
Your taku has
Tegu.
Your
Big lizard.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, cool.
It's very similar looking to a Komodo dragon, I guess. If
Not
you're-
quite as massive.
If you're not, familiar with what it looks like. That's kind of how I describe it. I was like, it's a miniature Komodo dragon. lived in the bathroom for a while. Has free roam of the apartment every once in a while, but lives in a tank if we don't want it to cause trouble, because it likes to hide underneath small objects.
Yeah, she's incredibly smart. I would put her on par with a smart dog. That's for sure. She's very attuned to patterns and
not aggressive at all towards people, which I found really cool. Like, I'll cuddle that thing. It's a real possibility.
Yeah, there's a pretty big stigma in the community that, like, you can't get too friendly with them. Like, they might seem friendly, but can't let your guard down. But like, I hand feed her, like ground turkey and scrambled eggs and.
They only eat meat.
Well, it becomes sort of a game of like hide the fruit, because she should eat that kind of stuff, but she's picky about what she likes. Like, she'll eat grapes, she likes strawberries, but she doesn't like.
Have you tried feeding her radishes?
No.
Should try it.
That would be horrible.
I have a pet pig.
Yeah.
And he eats everything. Everything you give him, he'll eat it. No matter paper, he'll eat it. But if you give him a radish, even like the end of a radish, he does not eat it.
The destructive behaviors.
He's very destructive. Well, to an extent.
He's very destructive.
If he came into here, he would probably like tear it apart. But my apartment, I purposely keep it very clean and like keep chemicals not under the sink. And
I get it. I had a pet pig.
Yeah, you did.
Yep.
Yeah.
Short
So
cake.
do you crate the pig when you're gone?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Litter box?
He goes outside. He's
Oh, wow,
trained to
okay.
go outside. Yeah.
Mine was so low riding that the litter box was too tall for it to get
Really?
into, so I like cut a hole with a little bandsaw in the litter box.
Mine gets when I just lived right across my apartment. Was that one?
Yes, that one across the hallway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had him, and he was in a litter box because I couldn't take him outside, every couple hours because he's a pig. He walks very slow, and I had him in a litter box, but I hated the litter box because he would just get litter everywhere and
he'd kick it around.
Yeah.
Well, this
Eventually he got
situation
too big
here
for
is-
it, so-
My pig loved to cuddle, though.
Oh yeah. I'm in bed and he's like, "Can I come in bed with you?" And I'm like, "No, you can sleep on the end of the bed."
How much does it weigh? And how old is it?
He's probably 75 pounds, and he's probably almost 2 years old.
Absolute unit.
He bites.
Wow.
He's huge.
He bites,
He
too.
doesn't bite.
Well,
He, head swipes.
remember that one time you
aggressive.
asked me, did he just bite you? I said no, but he really did.
Really? He did bite you?
Both those times, yes.
Oh.
That was for real. It was a stressful day.
It's always good when you,
It was
fall
like,
asleep
yeah,
right now.
you have documented remission of all your stuff, but we still might not let you in because it's
Because we're evil!
ketamine.
Because you use ketamine, and that's a scary
really?
substance.
Is that part of it, you think?
Oh, 100%. Because she had to educate her dean on the fact that it was even a legitimate thing. The medical school dean did not know that ketamine was used for depressive treatment.
Yeah, I had a written letter sent directly to the dean saying, like, yeah, she's totally fine, to continue on, in January.
And if nothing else, the fact that this treatment was legal.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, for me, that was the biggest aspect I was looking at, is like, make sure you're doing this from a legal avenue, like a board-certified doctor, someone who has credentials. Because if you don't...
Well, duh.
Well, you know what I'm getting at. Like, the average layperson is probably going to be like, oh, ketamine, I have a dealer who sells me that.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-mm.
I wouldn't trust that.
Nope.
But it's a thing.
So, the hospital had to tell the university that you had this treatment, and now the university is uncomfortable about it?
I guess that's how it seemed to me. There's a little bit of miscommunication because I didn't feel comfortable getting a letter from my anesthesiologist because first off, I didn't want my dean to receive a letter saying, hey, this ketamine thing did great. Because I wasn't going to mention it in an email, and I didn't have an opportunity to meet up with them beforehand. So I didn't want like that to come across their desk and just be like, what? And get completely blindsided. But at the same time, there was no sort of mental health aspect to it, right? Because he's an anesthesiologist, that's what he's board certified to do. So I went there, did my infusions. I mean, you obviously have to manage your headspace somewhat, but since it's a prolonged experience, if you will, isn't too jarring, then you do sort of your own thing on your own time, process through all of that stuff. I didn't feel like it was necessary to have my anesthesiologist sign off on my treatment regimen because they had no business in knowing my mental state, right? And that's what the hang-up was. So, yeah.
Why does the university need to be told at all? Because that you had this, because you were expecting not to finish or not to come back, maybe.
So the method was secondary. They just wanted to make sure that I had done something.
Okay.
And that I was fit to come back.
They basically recommended you get some kind of treatment.
Right.
And the treatment you got was this ketamine treatment.
Yeah.
And they find out about it and they're a little surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much exactly how it was.
Interesting.
Like,
And
wow.
In this, they still kind of have the power to recommend that you don't come back or you do something else.
They had the
before
power to
let you
force
back.
her to not be able to come back.
Yeah.
Luckily, that wasn't the case. The 3 people on faculty, one of them being the dean, sat down today at 3 o'clock and kind of played the game of Decide Haley's Fate.
Wow. And I mean, out of that meeting came positive.
Yes.
What you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to have some weird problem with it, and they will have you come back when you want to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's
So
awesome. So that's good, right?
No, it was a good outcome, but it was definitely a really stressful day.
Yeah.
That's
well,
that's for
cheers
sure.
to the stressful day and to completing it.
Now I have a
being
whole
here.
2-day break.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Today, right?
Twice.
I have a quick question though, because you stated that in the beginning, the treatment you could do like maybe once or twice a month, or you kind of keep going with it. So, was the university maybe upset because you were going to keep going with this treatment, or are you done with this treatment? Like, are you not going to do it anymore, or do you plan to go back?
So that all depends, right? Because there's nothing to support the time frame for which like any symptomatology could return.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I think that I'm self-aware enough to recognize that now. I know that you'll certainly be looking out for things. And I can literally just text my doc and be like, hey, I need to get on the schedule in this window. And he'll be like, okay, cool. Honestly, though, I mean, if you're working a full-time job as an anesthesiologist and you're in surgery all the time, like, you can't take calls. And then, doing infusions at night, because that's sort of his side thing.
It's really interesting. And you can basically get back on it whenever you need. I mean, at a certain point, he might be able to say, okay, as your physician, I think you don't need more of this. I can't prescribe you more of this treatment. Or he kind of work with you as long as you need it, as long as you want it. It seems like...
As long as you don't have any other health problems that would potentially complicate things. As far as I'm aware, if you feel like you need it, you probably do. It's time.
We must bounce.
Okay. Well, the rest of that bottle is yours.
Wow, no way.
Thank you.
Because Tim knocked the cork inside and now we have to
did.
finish.
Oh no!
It's corking the wine.
Oh no!
You can stay and finish a glass and make Tim go wait for you downstairs.
All right.
I'm not going to chug the rest of that glass in half a second.
Well,
However, I promise I am not diseased, so if anyone's about it, go for it.
Thank you.
This is going to be the focus of the next episode, this whole conversation we had, so thanks.
If you want to sit down and do like a legitimate ketamine episode, just give me some prompts and I can come at you with all kinds of cool literature and
Anytime.
That kind of deal.
Come back in a week or two, and Cal and I are when Cal's back, and we can hang out. Get the dog won't bark at you then.
Alright.
It was nice meeting you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Yeah,
Max.
Dude, I gotta put
Thanks.
shoes on.
I suck. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not a dude. I can't just slip on my little boots.
I didn't take mine off.
Yeah, well, I'm polite, so.
My ego hurts.
Tim, nothing can pierce your ego.
I don't know if to take that as a compliment.
I don't know
or
what I mean by
insult.
that. I just had a chance to say it, so I said
Alright.
Alright, goodbye.
Thank you
friends.
guys for coming. Great to see you, Tim. Nice to meet you,
It's
Haley.
on, Will.
Sandbag on, brother.
Sandbag on.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Well, flashback just a few years. It's 1997. There's a flood going on right out these windows.
Oh.
And you would see a big old line of people building a wall of sandbags.
Mhm.
And if you really thought about how many sandbags you had to stack today,
That's a lot.
you get overwhelmed. You can't do it. Just don't think about it. But you just sandbag on.
Sandbag
Keep sandbagging, you know? Do what you can in the moment, one at a time, and that's all you gotta worry about. What else can you do?